the back? Can you give me a thumbs up? All right, nice. Well, it's 5:30, so we're going to get started. Good evening. My name is Bernadette Romero Jaramillo. I am part of Protect Tesuque. I'm one of the board members and just want to thank you all for coming out for this very important town hall meeting. So we're going to have a lot of opportunity for questions and answers. And I'm going to pass the microphone over to one of our community members, Joanna. So come on over, Joanna.
Yeah, I didn't know you. So I'd like to welcome everybody. It's really good to see this group of people here tonight. And so I did a fair amount of research lately, and I'm going to spare you all that because I have 2 minutes only to speak. So what you need to know is that Juniper Capital is in the Billionaires Club. Its assets are very, very significant. And they have divisions in oil and gas and real estate. But I want to first tell you, so that's the background information I wanted to give you. I can have this sent out if you'd like later to receive some detailed information about them. But I want to tell you briefly about myself and why I'm here for 2 minutes. My name is Joanna Angie. I'm a painter and a former director of a mid-sized not-for-profit. I am one of the 20 Saturday morning protesters that have stood for 10 months every Saturday. My weekday evenings include regular meetings to discuss strategies to stop Bishop's Lodge from polluting our water. I'm a person with a pickup truck and a ladder. One of the people who helps hang the signs at 12 feet high so they won't be torn down. Thank you. The legal battle wages on. Juniper Capital has billions of dollars to fight this war. So we're up against it. My new strategy is now going to include all of you, each and every one of you. We need you to stand beside us. You know that corporations don't want protesters en masse in front of their entrance. And now is the time to make your voice heard and your presence felt. I'm here to ask each one of you to seize this time to sacrifice 2 hours on a Saturday from May 1st through August 30th. From 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. every Saturday, we will be out there on May 1st through August 30th. And we would like to make our presence so significant at the entrance to Bishop's Lodge that they know that there is nowhere to park, there will be cars up and down the street, and all of you will be holding signs. If you can't make it every week, we don't expect you to, but come as often as you possibly can. If you can come 2 or 3 times a month, you will make a significant difference. We may be able to get them to cave. We're not going to get them to cave necessarily with money. It's going to be your bodies and your faces that get put on cameras and shown all around town. So we need you. Protesting works, but only when you turn out. So bring your family, bring your friends. If anybody comes in town, bring them. Protect Tesuque has 140 donors, but we have 1,172 residents. And we have an additional 427 that live in the Pueblo. So we have a total of 1,599 people to make a presence out in front of Bishop's Lodge to say, we want our water protected. So I'm asking you to stand for water. The earth needs you now. Don't let the billionaires win, please.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Joanna. So I would like to make an acknowledgement for our elected officials that are in attendance for today. We've got a couple of them on Zoom. We have State Representative Andrea Romero. We have State Senator Peter Worth, and we have our commissioner. It looks like Justin Green is here as well, so thank you. So our next piece is going to be how did we get here, the background, and what is at stake. And Rusty is going to start us off.
I'm actually going to cut to the chase. I think everybody knows that on Monday, Teseque filed a petition with the New Mexico Supreme Court seeking a writ of mandamus directed to Secretary Kenny and the Environment Department. Tom Nasco is our attorney in that, and he's here to help answer some questions. But what I want to do is I want to give you a little background on why did we do that. I'm not going to go through the background. You've been following this for months. You know what's going on here. But I want to give you a little bit of background on why we did this and how powerful our case is. You need to understand just how powerful and important our case is, because it's not just about water in Tesuque. This is about how the state of New Mexico is run. So the first thing I want to explain are a couple of legal principles that govern our petition. When the legislature enacts law, under our Constitution, that law is supreme. That's what we mean by the rule of law. You obey the law, you follow the law. The executive branch enforces the law. It doesn't question it. It doesn't override it. It doesn't ignore it. It doesn't usurp the power to make law. It follows the law like the rest of us. When the legislature enacts two laws, one years before another, and a question arises, which law governs? We have very clear law in New Mexico to decide that question. The later enacted statute governs. The statute that offers more specific, more comprehensive rules on a subject governs. The New Mexico Department of the Environment is refusing to enforce the later enacted, the more specific Environmental Improvement Act and the regulations adopted under it. In 1967, the legislature enacted the Water Quality Act and promulgated ground and surface water protection regulations. 4 years later, the legislature came back and they said, you know what? That's not sufficient. Those regulations don't do what needs to be done to regulate the specific hazards of liquid waste disposal to ground. And we're going to adopt new regulations. The Environmental Improvement Board is created, and the Environmental Department is created to enforce those regulations. Not undermine them, not ignore them, not subvert them, enforce them. So the first thing to understand is that the liquid waste regulations have primacy over the Water Quality Act and the ground and surface water protection regulations. Second thing that I want you to understand is that when an executive agency refuses to apply the law, when it doesn't recognize the supremacy of the law as adopted by the legislature, that's not just a violation of law. That's a constitutional violation. In New Mexico, that's very clear. The Supreme Court has already ruled that when an executive agency like NMED refuses to apply the law and substitutes instead a different policy, it's not only abrogating the law, it's usurping the legislative power to make law. And that violates, according to the New Mexico Supreme Court, Article 3, Section 1 of our Constitution. Now, step back for a second. We all see what's going on in Washington, right? We all see an executive agency run amok, ignoring the laws that are adopted, substituting its policy for the law that's adopted, and telling the courts to go take a hike. Is that what's going to go on here in New Mexico? Are we going to stand by and watch the same thing happen here? That's what's at stake. You may all think it's just about a little local problem with groundwater. Some of our elected representatives may think that. This is a much bigger problem. And it needs to be fixed. Now, as you might expect, when executive agencies run amok, when they ignore the law and supplant that with their own policy, they always have a justification and an excuse for doing that. They always come up with a pretext. In this case, the New Mexico Department of Environment has given us a pretext. They say, oh, that later adopted law, those more specific regulations specifically adopted to protect you and me and everyone else in this room from the hazards of on-site liquid waste disposal, they don't apply if you're generating over 5,000 gallons of liquid waste. If you're a big generator and disposing a lot of liquid waste, hey, these regulations and law that were specifically adopted to protect your public health and the environment, well, they don't apply to the big boys. They just apply to the little people. Well, you know what? In New Mexico, we have laws that also tell us how to interpret the law, how to construe the law. And the first principle of those laws is that you construe a statute to effectuate its purpose. The purpose of the Environmental Improvement Act, which set no limits on the size of waste based on the size or the amount of waste generated, the purpose of that law was to protect public health and the environment. The purpose of the liquid waste regulations, which set no limit based on the amount of waste you generate, the purpose of those regulations was specifically to protect public health and the environment against discharges of liquid waste to ground and the hazards they create. It doesn't serve the purpose of that law or those regulations to interpret them, not to apply to the largest dischargers of liquid waste, to the generators who create the greatest hazard. Second principle for interpreting a statute is that you must construe it to give effect to every part of the statute or the regulation. You interpret the entirety of it in context. Well, the liquid waste regulations are very clear. They apply to any person and they set out the rules that govern everybody. Every dwelling, every establishment that generates liquid waste. You get three alternatives. Either you discharge into the systems that the regulation specifies, or you discharge into a contained system that never goes to ground, or you discharge to the public sewer. That's it. Those are your three choices. The resort is doing none of those. And NMED is refusing to apply the law that requires them to do at least one of them. So that's why we went to the New Mexico Supreme Court, because NMD doesn't get it. No surprise, the NMED hearing officer upheld NMED's position. Okay, now let's see what the courts do. Now let's see if a court agrees that this later enacted law, the later enacted regulations specifically adopted to address exactly what they're doing up there don't apply. And that the largest generators can get away with creating whatever hazards they want without regulation. Is that what the New Mexico Supreme Court's going to tell us the law is in the state? Maybe. Maybe it'll say, you know, we don't want to take this case. They have the discretion to do that. Maybe they will tell us that is what the law says. Well, then we have a choice. Because what's going on up there is absurd. The largest generators who create the greatest risk should not be allowed to get away without any regulation. Now I'm going to show you the significance of that and the effect of that. We have here in front of you a 3D model. I encourage all of you to come up and take a look at it. Every white dot on that model is a drinking well. The leach field is situated in the most hazardous location on the largest property. Right next to Little Tesuque Creek, near an alluvial basin that feeds the aquifers that drive all of those wells. They want to dump 6 times the volume that the liquid waste regulations require into a leach field that is 10 times smaller than regulations require. And they want to do it under pressure to make sure that effluent doesn't sit on the ground, that it goes into our aquifers. Every one of those wells is drawing water from those aquifers. How long is it going to take before you start drinking their contaminants? How long are you going to have to monitor your wells? How long are you going to have to filter your drinking water to protect yourself? Why should you have to do that when instead, if the New Mexico Environment Department applied the liquid waste regulations and made them follow safe disposal practices or discharge their waste to the sewer, you wouldn't have to do that. So the last thing I want to show you is what the effect is of the New Mexico Environment Department's decision. Mark, do you have that? Okay, so let me first start with this one. This is what's going on. I don't know if you can all see this, but I'm going to go through this very schematically. This is the resort's influent, their waste, comes into a treatment plant, comes out, gets dumped into a leach field. And then they have a monitoring well downstream from the leach field. There's no requirement to identify or test for what contaminants are in there, in this influent. There's no requirement to test for all the contaminants that come out of that. What's in there? We don't know because they don't test for it. They don't tell us. What goes into the ground? We don't know because they don't test for it. They can put anything they want into that waste stream under the permit they have. And the only thing they have to test for is total nitrogen only. That's it. They don't have to test for any other contaminant. And in their monitoring well, when they test this, they test for total nitrogen, total dissolved solid, and chloride. That's it. If you want to know whether the lodge is dumping toluene in here, you're going to have to test for it. If you want to know whether the lodge is dumping PFAs in here, you're going to have to test for it. If you want to know if there's arsenic, copper, lead, any of the other contaminants that the state regulates, you're going to have to test for it. The lodge isn't. That's what NMED is doing. This is what they're approving. This is what they're allowing. Can I put the last one up? This is what the liquid waste regulations would require if they were applied by NMED. Every lot owner would be responsible for the safe disposal of their liquid waste. They would not be allowed to introduce any hazardous waste into their waste stream. The draft permit imposes none of those requirements. There would be 2 permissible alternatives for disposal of treated waste. Either they must follow the regulations for on-site disposal, or they can go to the public sewer. NMED is applying neither of those requirements. On-site treatment and disposal must occur on the lot generating the waste. Every one of the hills and villas up there would have to do their own treatment and disposal on their property, so they incurred the hazard of their on-site disposal. They didn't transfer it to us. NMED doesn't require it. There would be rate-limited treatment based on site-specific conditions. NMED blows right by that and says you can treat as much as you want. Both the liquid waste requirements and the groundwater ground and surface water protection regulations would require tertiary treatment and disinfection. The liquid waste requirements and the permit both require that. Okay. A sop to us. The liquid waste regulations require rate-limited disposal based on site-specific conditions. There's a minimum surface and absorption area per disposal field. Not according to the permit, no restriction on the size. In fact, as I said, They're dumping 14,000 gallons right now and they're asking for permission to dump 30,000 gallons into a 2,500 square foot leach field, 10 times smaller than the regulations would require. There would be minimum separation between fields. They would have to have 6 different disposal fields to handle that volume under the liquid waste regulations. They have 1 and it's undersized. Those fields would all have to be separated. There would be minimum setbacks from streams. This is located within 100 feet of Little Tesuque Creek. They don't even apply that NMED. And the number of disposal fields on the total volume, as I said, would be 6. None of these restrictions are being applied to the lodge. Every one of those white dots on there, every one of them has an associated leach field, has a septic system. Everyone in this room is on septic. You are all subject to the liquid waste requirements. You all follow all of these requirements, but not the lodge. Now, why is that? Why are they getting passed?
Thank you, Rusty. So our next part of this meeting is community questions and answers, but we would like to give our representatives an opportunity to introduce themselves. So Mark's going to pull them up on the screen.
Good. Who do you want to start with?
We'll start with Andrea.
Andrea, please.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for accommodating virtual. I just want to introduce myself, Representative Andrea Romero. I represent all of House District 46 from the city of Espanola through the Poaque Valley into the city of Santa Fe, Tesuque being of course, so critical and thank you all for participating in this forum. I'm here to learn from you all. We've been trying to gather information around all of the various stakeholders and, of course, understanding what New Mexico Environment Department is responsible for. And so now with litigation in play, I know we're just trying to anticipate what's happening, but certainly just here to try to get information, answer any questions, and hopefully find some subject matter experts for everybody if necessary. I look forward to your questions.
Peter?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Peter Worth. I have represented Tesuque for 21 years in the legislature. First 4 years in House District 47 and the last 17 years in State Senate District 25. This is an issue that I certainly have been following closely. This session, we were able to successfully pass Senate Bill 21, which New Mexico, for the first time, now has primacy under the Federal Clean Water Act. And also we have control of all the ephemeral streams and wetlands that were deregulated with the Sackett U.S. Supreme Court decision. I appreciate Tesuque and the folks many in this room who kind of wanted to insert into that legislation, and I thank them for ultimately making the decision not to go that direction. I think we would not have passed what really is a historic bill for our state, because there's a number of other areas throughout the state that are using the same regulatory interpretation that Bishop's Lodge is using, which means that if you change this, it's going to impact not just Bishop's Lodge and Tesuque, but a number of other municipal discharges. And so that would have necessarily killed the bill, which would have been a disaster. We had to pass that bill. So I thank everyone for, again, not pushing on that front. I'm also here to listen. I will say that you all have an excellent attorney in Tom Nasco, who is someone I know, I've done cases with. He's represented me So again, he certainly is the right person to have, and I respect him immensely. So like Representative Romero, I think it's important that we, again, listen. It is in litigation. It does involve the state. So obviously we have an interest here and we want to understand what's going on. So thank you very much for the ability to attend virtually. I'm actually out of state, but this wanted to be on. So thanks so much, everyone.
Oh. Justin.
Good evening, everybody. Many of you know me, some of you don't. My name is Justin Green. I'm a county commissioner for District 1, which, very similar to Representative Romero, has a district that goes from the Santa Fe River up to the Santa Cruz River up in Espanola, with the Tesuque Valley in the center of it. For our part, we're sort of a third party in this, and we're following this closely. But we recognize that wastewater is an issue for this entire valley, and all the way from the 4 tribes that are a part of this, with Tesuque, Pewaukee, Nambe, and San Ildefonso, and Santa Fe County. And for our part of Santa Fe County, we've initiated a preliminary engineering report to start studying how to do a regional wastewater system that would collect all of this and be able to allow all of us to abandon our leach fields that are in the valley, and to do a collective regional wastewater system. Today, I actually got the 4th and last of the Pueblos to sign the MOU, so Santa Fe County can commence on this PER. And it's taken a bunch of time to get these 4 agreements signed. But literally this afternoon, I was able to get the 4th and last one. So I was happy to be able to come in and announce that here. And we should be working on that in the next few months. That said, these things don't happen very quickly. This is a large capital project. This will take years and years and years to do. So there's a lot of this groundwork here that is a part of the here and now, but we are working on a capital project to deal with this. And it will be tens of millions of dollars, but we're starting the study now. And as everybody is here, we're here to learn. We're here to understand where things are right now, and to try to work towards the future. So thanks for all being here, and thanks, guys.
I think so. I'll be right here. Oh, if they respond, I'll mute the microphone. So we are trying to record this. This is the scary part of this. I'm going to ask you if you have a question that you come up here and stand here. So, any questions? Wait 1 second. Thank you. Tom.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tom Nasco, and it's an honor to represent you in this endeavor. I'd like to thank Senator, Representative, and Commissioner for joining tonight. And thank you very much. I'd like to give you a little perspective that's perhaps different, and that's how did the Environment Department get where they are? And I know how they got there. There's nothing nefarious. It's nothing evil. It's how they've always done things. So when the legislature passed the Environmental Improvement Act in 1971, Rusty was exactly correct. It said, we need better regulation of liquid waste than the Water Quality Act can provide. Because the Water Quality Act does not prevent pollution. It allows pollution. So if you're a discharger, oil and gas, manufacturing, any industry in New Mexico, you can apply for a discharge permit and say, hey, I'm going to drop this into the aquifer. And it could be arsenic, it could be PFAS, it could be anything. And the Environment Department would say, okay, so long as we measure the water concentrations at a point of withdrawal and they don't exceed contaminant standards set forth in the regulations, you can do it. We'll let you pollute. So the legislature in 1971, 4 years later, said, whoa, 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 not for liquid waste. We don't We can't allow that. You've got to do something different for the hazards of liquid waste. Why? Because we don't know what's in it. We have no idea what you're putting down the drain. These 83 residents up in Bishop's Lodge, by the way, this is a poster child case for why the liquid waste regulations ought to be enforced. Bishop's Lodge, the permittee, has no idea what anyone's putting down the drain up in the residences. No idea. They don't know if it's turpentine, medical waste, which by the way is discharged through urine. They don't have any idea because they don't test for it, as Rusty said. So you have no idea. And by the way, there's some pretty good literature that's saying that PFAS are actually increased by tertiary treatment rather than decreased. So back to the original point, the reason why the liquid waste regulations were adopted was to impose engineering constraints to prevent contamination of the aquifer from things we don't know about. Because we can't possibly test for every single thing in liquid waste. We all know who's put things down the drain, kids or whoever, whatever they're doing. We have no idea. So the idea was, and Rusty went through this, is to minimize the size of leach fields, have appropriate setbacks for them. You don't want to overload the aquifer in a particular area with discharges of which you don't know the constituents. You just don't. Doesn't make any sense. So what happened? Where did the Environment Department, where did they come up with this idea? It's ingrained in the psyche of the bureaucracy through no fault of their own. Here's what happened. When the Environmental Improvement Act was enacted in 1971, there was no mention of any limitations, any jurisdictional limitations on how much you can discharge into a leach field and then be exempt. 5,000 gallons, you're exempt. There was nothing like it. The Environmental Improvement Act identified the discharger, commercial and residences, who are all subject to the regulations that were to be adopted by the Environmental Improvement Board. So what happened? Well, somewhere along the line, the Environment Department decided that leach fields could be of a certain size. It started out at 2,000 gallons per day discharge maximum. Subsequently was changed and then changed again, so it's currently 5,000 gallons per day. Now I can tell you that Senator Worth and Representative Romero will be the first to tell you that an executive agency who's in charge of executing the laws cannot tell you what their jurisdiction is going to be. That's for the legislature. So what they've done is a long time, and we have no idea why this happened. I have some ideas. I think that the gallon per day increase in leach fields was due to the improvements in technology of leach fields, right? Makes sense. Your leach fields are getting better, the engineering's getting better, we're going to allow you to put more gallons per day. Now the regulations are quite clear that, by the way, if you want to discharge 30,000 gallons, you can. But you're going to need 6 leach fields. Each one's 5,000 gallons maximum. And that's why I'm going to dovetail here why we're in the Supreme Court. Okay? Because what we have now, and this is where I'm going to go back to your civics lessons that we all had in high school, right? And they're still true today. You can't alter the jurisdiction that the legislature confers upon you. If you do that, you're actually trying to make law, which is in the exclusive province of the legislature. That's why there's a constitutional violation. Okay? By imposing this 5,000 gallon per day artificial limitation, and it's totally artificial, it could change tomorrow. It could be 6,000 gallons, it could be 4,000 gallons. Technology may have changed again. It could be 10,000 gallons. Who knows? But you can't do that. The legislature said you can't do that. You have to impose all of these engineering constraints on everyone discharging liquid waste. So the Environment Department's going, whoa, wait a minute here. We've always done it this way because it says 5,000 gallons. We said, yeah, you're right, but it says 5,000 gallons per system, not per discharger. And that's the crucial distinction here. So it's nothing nefarious on their part. they're not trying to do something that's underhanded. They're confused. And it's ingrained in the history of what the regulations have been and what they've been through. Now, I think you remember, I hope you remember when I talked here before at some of our earlier meetings, I said, this is a heavy lift, all right? Why is it heavy lift? It's a heavy lift because that's the way it's always been done. And it's really difficult when you're taking a position that's going to upset the apple cart and not only affect Tesuque, but affect statewide. And if changes need to be made or variances need to be applied for, that can happen in the legislature. But right now, the Environmental Improvement Act does not allow what they're doing. So there's probably a reason why the hearing officer threw up her hands. And by the way, she's very smart. I have a lot of respect for her. And I like her. I've known her for years. We used to be adverse. She used to be an attorney with the Environment Department back when it was the Environmental Improvement Division. It wasn't even a department. But she's very careful and very smart. But the problem is, I think she threw up her hands and said, you know, I'm not even going to tell you why we're denying the motion. We're just going to deny it for the reasons set forth in the briefs. So that's why we've got the opportunity, because of this constitutional issue, to bypass the typical procedures. You know, what you typically would do is you go through a hearing. All right, you get the hearing, you get done. You appeal it to the Water Quality Control Commission. You don't like that decision, you appeal to the Court of Appeals. Very limited scope of appeal. Number one, the Water Quality Control Commission has no jurisdiction to adjudicate a constitutional issue. That's why I believe the Supreme Court's going to take this petition. I don't know that they're going to grant it, okay, because it's a heavy lift. But I will say this, if I get a chance for oral argument, it's not going to affect municipalities or anyone else. It's only affecting people who are discharging to ground. Not people who are receiving the wastes through a public sewer system as per the liquid waste regulations and then discharging it through surface, usually surface water. So, yeah, it's going to take some changes, but they're going to be for the better. So that's where we are in terms of that. So what I've done tonight, I think I brought 10 copies of our petition. If you're interested in the legalese part of it, it's all in there. But the bottom line is, it's coming down to the fundamental principle of our government, which is the legislature legislates, the executive executes, and as an executive agency, you don't impose your own policy that's contrary to what the legislature told you to do. It's pretty simple, right? I mean, that's what it's about. So we'll see if that happens. But anyway, thank you so much.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you both for being here. It's reassuring to see you taking an interest in this. One of our community members, who I don't think is here tonight, put her house up for sale. She got an offer on it immediately, and then they backed out because the word on the streets all the way down to Taos is the water in Teseque is poisoned. That's what we're up against. That's what we're up against. And it's important for you all to know that, because our investments are in our homes. And if we wanted to sell them right now, it might be very difficult for many of us to do that. And you all need to know that. What my question is, Tom, you answered my first question. My second question is, it seems like, listening to what you said tonight, Rusty, we're worse off than when we started. There were more things that they were going to be checking in the water prior to this, when they were planning on dumping directly into the creek and getting the EPA permit. It looks like now they're not doing any of that. Is that correct? Oh,
So when they were filing for an NPDES permit, EPA had jurisdiction, EPA set the standards, and they had a more prescriptive set of conditions for discharge to the Little Tesuque Creek than NMED has proposed in their draft discharge permit to the leach field.
Hi, I'm Brian Corcoran. I live at, my wife and I live at 9 White Boulder Road. So we're down the way. I may be asking a question about the obvious, but as I drive up Bishop's Lodge, where is the leach field? Is it that second horse paddock that always has water or some kind of liquid standing in it? And secondarily, I thought they were only supposed to discharge during the winter months. And this is April. And it's about to be May. So, excuse me if I'm pointing out the obvious, but here's my concern. I'm the guy that paid $3,000 to have my well tested, and my water, as Rusty said at the last meeting, was pristine. I don't want to have to spend $3,000 every year to have my well tested, have somebody tell me that just screwed up my water, and I lost, a considerable value of my house, and I won't be able to sell it. So, no question, but is that true? Is that the paddock where the leach field is?
If you look up Bishop's Lodge, the driveway that goes up,
Yep.
there's 3 fences here,
Right.
and you see the tree line where the creek goes through.
Yep.
Just this side of the creek, on this side of the road. You might even be able to see some pipes there, or that's the leach field. Sometimes there's standing water there as well, so it's not really draining very well.
It's not draining, it's draining to the creek.
This is about 75 feet. I mapped it on Google.
So, welcome our elected officials to go drive by there, because this is very real for us. We invested in moving to Santa Fe. I came from Dallas-Fort Worth. This is where I plan on retiring. If I can't sell my house and this becomes a Superfund site, and Juniper Capital or whoever those guys are disappear, we have no recourse. We're screwed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Eric Sorotkin. Thank you for being here. The politicians, the people coming together. It is very special that we stay together, that we work together, and that we get real commitments from our people in the legislature, from our county commissioner, to look deeply at these issues. As people may know, we live 3 doors down from Bishop's Lodge. We're going to be the first wave, if you would, or are already the first wave. We've just spent the similar amount to have our well tested now, and borrowed money to do that. So we are looking at real change in the quality of our life in Tesuque. And for you all in the legislature, for example, we look to you to stand up for the people in this regard. Just as Peter, you mentioned that the community backed off a little, let this go through. We can let this go through, but in the end, what role will the environmental improvement the environment NMED, what role will they play in really enforcing the law for everyone involved in this? And how do we avoid the issue of of things being put down into our waste fields in violation of the law. So we're really asking you, you've learned something tonight. I would like to hear from each of you what you're going to do with this information going forward so your constituents can both hold you accountable, but so that you could say, aha, this is something I didn't know, I didn't realize, how do I go forward with that? And the second thing is, if everyone, I would like to hear from our scientific people at a certain time. We heard Tom mention about what could be dumped into here. We need to, in light of the media's expose and Bishop's Lodge's selling points about this, we have to ask the questions in very real terms, which is, you can dump turpentine down the water. It can go into the aquifer. You can dump, what are the things you can dump from the villas, from the lodge? And let's start our list. Because when you see that list, you as politicians, you as members of the community are going to say, wait a minute, that can't be the case, because the liquid waste regulations prohibits dumping of hazardous materials. Their application does not. So if you have a question about something being dumped into this system, send it to, go to protecttesuque.org and send a message, send a question, send an item. Is this filtered? Is this filtered? Is this filtered? Because that's the way you begin to understand the risk.
Peter, Andrea?
So I'm happy to jump in. A couple thoughts. First of all, I think Commissioner Green talking about the long-term solution, which is a regional system, has to be at the top of the list. In visiting with Tesuque Pueblo leaders during this session, they indicated to me that they're seeing increased E. coli levels during the summer months in Tesuque Creek right now. So the fact of the matter is, your next door neighbor could be pouring turpentine down their well, creating exactly the same risk. I mean, we've got a system here that's all on septics that needs to be updated. And I think while the legislature has money, I just think ultimately that is the best interest of everybody in the whole region. With respect to this specific situation, I've been dealing with a very parallel one involving water leasing and an interpretation by the state engineer about how water can be leased and basically under the statute avoid the due process that's clearly spelled out in the law. It went to the point where I've actually introduced legislation to try and get the state engineer to simply follow the law. The problem is I can't get that passed. I can't get it through the legislature, number one. And number two, the minute they think that it starts to move forward or there's a legal challenge, which there was in that case, they just stop doing the specific action and the issue goes away. The difference here is this issue is not going to go away. This needs to be addressed. I'll just say it's helpful to understand exactly what's going on. Obviously, you know, Representative Romero and I are in a position where we can introduce legislation to try and put guardrails on how this statute is being interpreted. It'll be very interesting to see if the Supreme Court steps in or doesn't step in. Again, as I mentioned up front, I think Tom Nasco is the perfect person to have representing you all here, but there are definitely options and things that we can look at moving forward. But long term, I think that having a regional system really makes sense for a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah, I'll just put an accent on everything that Senator Worth spoke about. In addition to that, I think I hadn't quite heard the thesis of your concerns. So I really appreciate the cohesion around what the effort is for us to really clearly understand what we're trying to do. I think potentially legislatively, and understanding what the Supreme Court may or may not do, and certainly what we would be interested in trying to figure out for a 30-day session, would have to certainly be strategic in getting it on the governor's call, should that be necessary, and or perhaps an executive order. But again, long term, what we could do to help with the various efforts for you all to feel safe. That's my critical number one, concern, is ensuring that long term that we have these solutions available. And I had not heard about the E. coli as well down the river at this point. So I think just continuing to collect the information around what's actually happening. We're dealing with this same sort of contamination issues in the Boaca Valley. I know Commissioner Green and I have been through numerous situations and already have a regional system underway there. So these longer term solutions, I think, need to be part of the conversation more readily as to what we can do to really try to understand what the next steps are, and perhaps try to speed that up quite a bit.
Thank you.
I have a question for both of you. The thing that baffles me, and I respect, and my partner worked for government agencies for some time, I respect your position, but I also cannot comprehend in any way how it's possible that 1,600 residents on a massive tract of land, so therefore any sewage that we're producing is fairly minimal on a large piece of property, like perhaps 2 people live on 5 acres, or let's take a look at the reservation and the amount of square footage there. And then somehow Bishop's Lodge doesn't have to follow any of the policies that apply. I mean, 2 new septic tanks were put on our property because we have a rental unit when we purchased it. Why is it that 1,000 people can be using the ridge? I mean, I've hiked all over their property. Why is it that 1,000 people can be using that on a daily basis, flushing everything under the sun down the toilet, not to mention, whatever else, on such a small piece of property, and not have safeguards in place that there's no way that that's, injecting into the soil is not going to overflow. I mean, the streams there have overflowed. We've seen horses standing in water. You've seen the water 4 feet deep flowing right next to where this field is. I mean, this is where a corporation that has this amount of assets should stand up and do the right thing. They should be the leaders. This is Auberge Resorts. I understand that you are possibly going to be representing us and in conversation with Bishop's Lodge, and I would hope that you would emphasize that they need to do the right thing by this entire community. I mean, we are equally as expended in this region as Bishop's Lodge is. So this is not a money matter, because this room can match Bishop's Lodge. They've already paid for their houses and have been fixing them and investing in them. We are a huge asset to your community. And we want to protect the water for future generations, and for the animals, and for the Pueblos, and for everyone. It isn't just about us. This is about everyone that lives in this region. And I see children in that creek. I see animals in those creeks. Dogs are drinking out of there. Horses are drinking out of there. Fish are in there. We need you to stand up for us. Thank you. And I don't know what feels bad.
Thanks, Jen.
Hello, Representative Romero and Senator Worth. My name is Grace Hadamia, and I am 10 years old. I live in Tesuque Village. I would like to ask you both a question. What can you do to help keep my community to have clean water and a clean environment? After all, it would be my generation to be affected the most. Please protect our water, and thank you for your time.
It wouldn't be.
Grace, I just want to thank you for your question and for taking the time. For your parents encouraging you to get involved, and folks, whoever it is that encourage you to speak up about this issue, I just want to say thank you. The future of our water is critical, and I just want to say to the folks in the room and those that have been working on this issue for as long as you have, the state is certainly hearing you, the federal government certainly heard you, and from the information that I had, as far as how your voices are working, has never in the state history of the state of New Mexico, this amount of organization and certainly the amount of interest in this issue is unprecedented. And so it's certainly critical that you understand that that your organization and the work that you're doing is working and has sent certainly the bells are ringing in the minds of a number of people for this effort and to try to ensure that we are getting the right information, doing the right thing, because it is unprecedented how much support you are getting through this process. And certainly the amount of folks, they've never had this much interest in any issue. And I think the last 100 years is what we had heard in anything across the state. So it's really critical that we get this right for the future of not just this community, but for New Mexico and how we deal with this issue. And certainly the folks that are in charge of finding the right solutions are listening up.
And I'll just add, Grace, thank you for being there tonight. Your voice is just as important as all the other voices in that room around you. Clearly something's not right. And the problem is, as Tom Nasco said, there's laws on the books that are being interpreted in a different way than the actual meaning of the words on the page. And this happens, and we see this happens. That's when courts get involved. That's why you have three branches of government. The legislature makes the laws, the executive follows and interprets those laws, and when there's a disagreement, the courts step in, and that's kind of where we are. I think what we have to figure out is how did we get here? Because again, Bishop's Lodge is using the interpretation that the Environment Department has followed for many, many years. And there's others around the state that are doing the same thing. So this is a bigger issue than just Bishop's Lodge, and it's something we're certainly interested and care about. I care deeply about water, and just my own history at Bishop's Lodge. When I was at Stanford, both Representative Romero and I are Stanford graduates. Back when I was there a long time ago, I spent all my summers working at the Bishop's Lodge. Back in the day when they did all their sewage out in that pond out there, Jim Thorpe thought he had that figured out. So I think there's been issues with how this has been done for many, many years. So we certainly care, but just want to thank you, Grace, for speaking up, and we're listening.
Do I hold it like up in front of my mouth? Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is Devin Bent, and I live in Nam Bay, and I followed this issue with some interest. I want to thank all you people at Teseque, because I really believe that you're fighting a fight that all of us are going to fight very soon. One of the things that's happening is they are laying the pipeline for the water system. And I don't know if any of you know this, but Teseque, I don't know how to put this, reclamation kind of cooked the water demand study. And there's a lot of water headed for Teseque, particularly over 600 acre feet per year. That creates a lot of housing, a lot of sewage. So this issue, in a sense, Bishop Lodge is the tip of the iceberg. And if you don't win it, we're all in trouble. And I really appreciate it. I also want to commend Commissioner Green. I don't know if he knows it, but more than 20 years ago, Reclamation put their experts to work on this, and they came up with an unasked for recommendation, and they said, don't build a regional water system without a regional sewer system. And I'm glad that, you know, somebody in the government has acted on it, and I hope our state legislatures will support this effort in the legislature. So thank you very much for your attention and for what you're doing.
I have two comments. I'm Mark DeCamp. And I wouldn't want to put all my eggs in our regional water systems. They don't always work. La Cienega will tell you that. And my property will always be on a well and always be on a septic tank in Teseque. So it's no solution for me and many others probably.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, my name is Ellen Humphreys, and I just had a question quickly for each of you. I appreciate your aspirations for long-term solutions for this, because obviously this is not an issue just about Bishop's Lodge. This is an issue that is going to affect all of New Mexico, all New Mexicans, and could set a precedent outside of our state. So while I appreciate your aspirations for long-term solutions, I was wondering if I could maybe get one concrete thing that each of you intends to do about this issue right now, because we recently had, in the last few months, we had an incredible hydrogeologist come and speak to us. And from what I understand that she said, there is not remediation for this. There is not a cure once the groundwater is poisoned. The dumping has already started. We know that it's already 14,000 gallons of sewage a day going into our drinking water. They want it to be 30,000. They've spoken of 60, I think even 80,000 gallons a day going into our water. And I don't believe to my understanding, there is no solution for that. So I would like to see if maybe we can find one concrete thing, that each of you can do in the short term, that is not aspirational, but is something that you will do, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I'll tell you what I plan to do is go and sit down with Bishop's Lodge and try and figure out and let them know that this clearly has huge issues and what other options are there for them to consider. So again, I think, you know, they've been trucking this stuff out of there. Maybe they need to keep trucking it out of there until there's a system built to discharge it. So I'm going to have that conversation with them.
My commitment is the same. I think that's the critical issue here, is just understanding where they see their long-term sort of strategy meeting ours. And I think there's just a reality here that we need to, you know, ensure that whatever is happening currently that is keeping folks safe or not, that we basically look at what we can enact today to make sense for a pathway to the future. As just being able to also provide good information, I think the strategy for the folks here and be able to unite the community around what's happening, just to be able to help understand. And I appreciate folks that are traveling from other parts of New Mexico to be part of this conversation, because it is critical for the state. And so, you know, to ensure that folks have that information and can participate in their own future.
Thank you. I could also suggest a more imminent possibility, and that is support the petition for the writ of mandate to the Supreme Court and get us heard from the Supreme Court.
First of all, thank you very much for attending. You do us honor by coming and by listening and by thinking about this deeply. And I appreciate, as Alan said your aspirations, and I appreciate a concrete step, but I want to frame the three issues for you that I think come out of here. It's not about just safety. You can see everyone is concerned about their safety, but that's not the only issue. The issues are also justice and our environment. And I encourage you, if you were here in person, to take a look at this 3D model and ask yourself, from an environmental perspective, why is the first interaction between Little Tesuque Creek and humans Bishop's Lodge leach field? This water pours out of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in pristine condition. And the first thing we do to it is dump 30,000 gallons of human waste. This makes no sense. It is absolutely the wrong thing to do in the wrong place, and it imposes all of the consequences on the downstream neighbors and none of the people generating the waste. The liquid waste regulations were designed specifically to stop that, and we're letting it happen. The second thing I want you to consider is justice. Why is the lodge getting a different set of regulations than everybody else in this room, all of your constituents? Is it really sound policy as a legislator to say that the entity that creates the greatest hazard and the most risk by generating the largest volume of liquid waste gets an exemption from the regulations that were designed to protect our public health and the environment from exactly those practices? They don't apply to them? Don't you see the absurdity of that? Do you really need the New Mexico Supreme Court to tell you it's absurd and shouldn't apply as a legislator, as a policymaker in our state? And when you sit down with the lodge, are you going to bring that to their attention? It's a function of justice as much as safety and the environment. We've elected you to represent us on all three fronts, and we hope you will. Thank you.
I'm Quinn Evans. I heard Senator Worth thanking us for not doing everything we could to stop Senate Bill 21. I understand that you see great value in it. The downside of that is the village of Teseque is looking to take quite a large hit from that legislation that you sponsored and passed. And so I'm calling on you to manifest your gratitude in a very real way and make sure that you do things to protect our groundwater, because Senate Bill 21 is putting our groundwater, will be putting our groundwater at great risk. And I don't believe that waiting for a community waste system sometime in the future is a good approach. We're talking, we live in New Mexico. So I think if you get it done really quickly, we should see something like that in 20 years. I think that's a reasonable projection. So what I'm asking for is something different. If you want to go the community wastewater route, getting Bishop's Lodge to hook up to Santa Fe Municipal Waste Treatment is a very direct and simple, although probably expensive, way to go. But it fits your model of having a community wastewater solution. I think there are probably other less expensive ways to go, like numerous leach fields that fit the science, that take care, that are not just like, oh yeah, well, there's a leach field that was permitted many years ago in a different place, and now it's right next to the Little Tesuque Creek, and that is fine. That is not, to me, a viable solution. So if you're talking to Bishop's Lodge, talk to them. And maybe the first point is hook up to the municipal system. There are problems with that. You know, our municipal system in Santa Fe is not great. It has problems with some of the same chemicals we're concerned about. The science is starting to figure out how to address those. And if you have it concentrated in a municipal system, then that municipality can take steps. So that's what I want to say. Please, if you have any sway with Bishop's Lodge, start there, and we'll settle for multiple leach fields that can handle what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. My name is Claire Libben. I live on 11 North Boulder Lane, my property. It's on the creek, and I've lived out here in New Mexico about 30 years. It's Tesuque 10. I know we're saying that it's not nefarious with Bishop's Lodge getting a completely different deal than all of us have, but I have to say, why does a corporation get a special deal different than the rest of us? It does feel nefarious to me. I don't understand it. My brain can't connect that. And I'm happy I'm going to talk to Bishop's Lodge. But if they're not aware of what's going on right now, I'm one of the protesters. We're out there. I'm out there every Saturday, but as many as I can. And if they don't know what's going on, I don't buy that. They know what's going on. They just don't want to deal with it. And it goes higher up to their investors. They're the ones who want to resell Bishop's Lodge. And it's all about money. We are real people that live here, and these are our homes, our investments, our water, our precious water that feeds the animals and the environment. And I would like to go higher up than chatting with Bishop's Lodge. Very nice, I'm happy you're going to do that. But the problem, if they don't get what they're doing, they're blind. And also the people that live in the condos, I forget what they're called, above it, that they don't know what's going on because they're not affected. They're above it. They live above it. We live with, most of us live within the creek, within the water. It's very selfish. It's very karmically bizarre to me that they feel comfortable with this. This is an environmental issue, and great at Bishop's Lodge has talked about it, but we need to move further up the chain, and it's a double standard with corporations. I don't know, maybe people are welcoming corporations because they come with big money and it all looks very fancy. That could be it. But I'm just one person stating my fact, and I really appreciate you coming to this talk today. And I encourage everyone, as Joanne said, to come out and demonstrate with us on a Saturday morning, give an hour, 2 hours, whatever you have, to show that we, the people of Tesuque, are not happy about what's happening, and we want to stop it. And we are here in physical bodies to represent our community. Thank you very much.
So just so you know, we were given an extra 30 minutes tonight, mostly because we thought we were going to have a good turnout, and we did, and we thank you for that. More questions? We have a few more minutes.
My name is Donna Amos, and I live above Shadoni. I've lived there for 45 years, and every morning I get up and I go out on my beautiful property and I look at the mountains and I give thanks to God because we have that. And I breathe in real slowly so I can feel that cold air in the morning going into my lungs. And I am so grateful every day that I live here. And we're all so blessed beyond belief. And thank you for being here. But I'm going to tell you, I'm a very blunt person. I'm sorry. But you're moving too slowly. We will all be dead by the time a regional water system is done, or a, septic thing, whatever. We'll all be dead. I understand, I'm not a politician. I don't want to be one, and I appreciate you taking your life and stepping into the arena to represent all of us. But it's not going to work. If you go and talk to Mr. whomever it is at Bishop's Lodge, you're going to have some chutzpah or something. They've got to know that they have the means to get rid of all of the stuff that they need to get rid of. And we who live here on a daily basis, the people who come into Bishop's Lodge, they're here to have a good time, and they can afford it. They're all wealthy, they're all, and they go and they play and then they leave, and here we are. Well, I don't think that's good enough, but I do appreciate both of you being here and stepping up. Thank you, but it's not good enough. I'm sorry. So we've got to do something else. I feel ashamed that I'm just now taking part in this. I knew this was going on, but I didn't know the depth of it. And I know that there are a lot of people who live in Tesuque who probably don't know that either. I have a guest house that I've rented to, guests from out of the state. They adore Tesuque and New Mexico and everything. And Georgia O'Keeffe once said, "I don't mind dying, I just hate to leave New Mexico." And that's the way I feel. I feel really that way. But the thing is that I feel a responsibility to the people who come to my guest house now. I don't know, maybe I should hide the newspaper so they don't read what, but I will disclose things because it's important. But all I can say is Bishop's, I don't know the lady who said it, but she was so right. And she said, Bishop's Lodge needs to do the right thing. They know what the right thing is. Thank you very much.
I like the lady that said chutzpah. Let's wrap up the Q&A by gathering around and ask questions about this model. Everyone should take a look at it before we leave. It does show the funnel of the water around the hillsides above Bishop's Lodge, and it funnels right down through the septic field, Bishop Lodge, before it goes down the throat to your wells. So if there's any other questions, let's come on up. Okay.
I'm Jamie Gagan. I've lived out in the valley for 38 years. I'm a retired ER physician at St. Vincent's Hospital, and I worked at UNM many years ago. What? Oh, sorry. I think they can hear me. Anyway, I'd just like to know if you can commit, the two of you, to actually following up on these issues with the governor, with Secretary Kenny, with the ground and surface water bureaus, to make sure that we have some action on this. I know next legislative season is just going to be financial in terms of budgetary stuff, and it's going to be 2 years before any new bills come through. But we really would like you to commit to spending some time on this soon with both the governor and NMED. You think you can do that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. The answer is yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
just to be clear about what comes next is, we are waiting on the Supreme Court to make a decision. To my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the water is not being discharged, it's being trucked out at this point. And so it's not. So I'm seeing the shaking heads. I think getting some clarity on the process right now, both talking to the Environment Department. I don't know if they're going to be able to comment while they're in litigation or meet with us at this point. So I think for me, that's step one. And in gathering that, I've been working with their staff for the last year to get that information. But nevertheless, yes, meeting with the governor's office, our various stakeholders in state government, and understanding the enforcement mechanisms that we do have and pressure points that we can ensure that we have. And to Senator Worth's point, if they're not already enforcing the law on a number of other issues, I think we have a broader sort of interest in trying to figure out how that works. And so, yes, the answer is yes, I will continue to follow up with this.
So, and during the session on Senate Bill 21, I did arrange for, I think Rusty was there, a meeting with the Environment Department. They basically were not backing down. And so I realized the frustration, and that's why you've got the right guy representing you in front of the Supreme Court. That's why you have a judicial branch to get the kind of immediate action that you're looking for. It is very difficult to change years and years of an interpretation by an agency. And so, again, certainly I'm willing to keep talking to them, though. I think that's what's important, is that there is a channel of communication.
Thank you, Andrea and Peter. Hey, there is a petition going around. If we'll make sure you get a copy or direct it to it so you can sign it, possibly. That'll send some weight. Hey, I want to thank our elected officials for joining us tonight, both online and in person here. So thanks from our community and from Protect Tesuque, who helped arrange this. Summary of next steps for everyone: please continue the conversation with your neighbors. Write your legislatures, donate now and often. We're entering another legal battle, so we'll be coming back soon announcing some donation drives, but please don't wait for them. And gather with us on Saturdays. Right now it's 11 to 1, but after the 1st, it's going to move to 9 to 11. Also, there's a free community movie night coming up. We're going to be presenting the Milagro Beanfield War, which had a very similar water battle with ours, fighting industry or large corporations. They were building a golf course or something too, is that right? So that is Saturday, May 10th, 7 p.m. Doors open at 6:30. That's at the old Shidoni Gallery, right down the road here, ground zero. And if there's nothing from anybody else, thank you, everyone. It was a great meeting. Thanks for coming.